The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
I did hear that they were coming through necessary media.
Because it's necessary. Necessary media. Media, because it's necessary.
Yes, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am back again, your host and friend Michael DeOliveira, ushering in the necessary era every Wednesday here live on Comcast Channel 95. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe here. We're going to put it right there. I know this is going to be another one of those shows like I did a couple weeks back. If you're familiar with the show, you probably tuned in, especially on this episode, when we had one of the important questions coming up on the ballot, the legalization of marijuana. We had that debate. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open it up to another debate. We got the charter school expansion coming up. And today, ladies and gentlemen, if we can introduce my guests. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Senator Michael Rodrigues, and representing the Fall River Teachers Union, we have Rebecca Cusick. We're going to be going over the pros and cons on both sides of this. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time, we have friends who haven't watched yet, go get them. It's an important topic. Now, what I want to do is open up the conversation. I guess we'll start on this side. We'll go back and forth. I guess give your overall synopsis on why you would support the expansion, and then we'll get the against. And like I said, we'll do a well-balanced back and forth. I'm going to do my best to moderate the middle, but I guess we'll start on this side and we'll go back and forth. So, Mike,
thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for this opportunity to come on Necessary Media show.
I take all the promos I can get.
Yeah, but I'm here representing the yes side. I have always supported our charter public schools, like I've always supported our traditional public schools, our preschools, our law schools, our vocational schools, because I'm a firm believer that when it comes to education, one size does not fit all. And every parent should have the opportunity to choose the educational model that best fits their child. We know when you get to high school, you can choose a vocational model versus a comprehensive high school model, and we have free public vocational high schools. We have a tremendous one right here in Fall River, Diamond Voc. But when it comes to elementary school, unless you come from a family that has the wherewithal, the means to afford a private school, whether it's Moses Brown or Lincoln Academy or Friends Academy or one of the non-sectarian private schools, or one of the great parochial schools we have in the city of Fall River, from St. Michael's to Holy Name to Holy Trinity to St. Stan's, Espirito Santo. We have some great elementary parochial schools here in Fall River. But if you can't afford that, you really have no choice. And I don't think that's fair. I think we heard a lot this election season from Bernie Sanders, who made a great run in the Democratic primary, who railed against the fact that we really have two Americas. We have two Massachusetts, we have two Fall Rivers, that if you have the ways and means and you can afford it and you have money, well then you can choose what type of education you have. But if you don't have the ways and means and the wherewithal, you have no choice. So I think it's important that parents be given the opportunity to choose what type of educational model works best for their child. And I don't care if you live in the Highlands or in the Flint or in Maplewood or in Corky Row, there's nothing more important than education. Nothing is going to move this city, this region, this state forward more than a good quality education. We have excellent traditional public schools, we have excellent charter public schools, and we have, unfortunately, too many children, too many parents, too many families that are waiting on waiting lists for the opportunity to make a choice, and that's why I'm in favor of charter public schools.
Well, that was a great way to open it up. Now, there's a couple ways because again, I'm going to be doing my best here to try to moderate both sides. So there's a couple ways I could have tried to counterbalance that, but that's not what I want to do yet, because that's what I think now it's Rebecca's turn. Rebecca, now I want to see if you can, I know you're following, but I'd rather see if you could just make your case first, and if there's anything that you heard that you'd like to counter, I guess you could try to jump in a little bit on that.
Sure. I want to start off by saying that many of the folks who are against question 2 and who are going to vote no are not anti-charter, but they are against this question because they see it as irresponsible. Adding 12 new charter schools per year, forever, basically, would have a serious impact on our traditional public schools to the point where serious cuts or even school closures would have to take place. There is nothing in this ballot question which addresses the funding formula. And recently, there was a bipartisan foundation commission formed that did a review of education funding and found it lacking by about $1 billion, particularly in certain areas like special education, which are very high-cost areas. The other concern that I have, I'm a Fall River resident. I sent my 4 boys to public schools in Fall River. I pay taxes here. I would like local control over our schools. And with our traditional public schools, we vote for a school committee. And the budget process is very transparent and very open. And the same is not true of a charter school. They're privately run but publicly funded. So I feel that local control is important to keep.
I know now funding is going to be one of the biggest questions I got from everybody out there. It gets into the, why are my tax dollars being spent technically on a school that, like as Mike did just brought up, some kids are still on a waiting list. They're trying to get in for their reasons. They're trying to get in. They're on a waiting list, waiting, and you still have parents who are paying the taxes toward this. So one of the questions I have has to do with that, the whole funneling of tax dollars. Now, again, I'm going to try to do my best to do a back and forth here. So I know you had brought it up. What's the, I guess, your response to that, or how can you address that to the public, their concerns over the actual, how it, as she just brought up, it's public money being used in this private way?
It's not a private way at all. It's absolutely not a private way, and it is local control. All the members of the boards of trustees of these schools are local people. These are local citizens that came together to create a charter school for an alternative method of choice for parents. But as far as the funding goes, you really have to, I'll try to make it simple, but it's very complicated. Rebecca knows this when you look at the Chapter 70. Chapter 70, you've heard that term, it was Chapter 70 of the Acts of 1993 that created education reform. And the premise was, under this law, was that all children in Massachusetts, regardless of your zip code, should have a basic level of good public education. That's called the foundation level. So all public school students, whether they're traditional public school or charter public schools, all the demographic information of these students goes into this big stew. A foundation level is created by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. DESE reaches this foundation level, and then it's determined how affordable is this foundation level for the community that you're from. For instance, in Fall River, I think it's 81.7, but call it 80% of that foundation level is paid by the state, 20% is paid by the local community. Newton, 24% is paid by the state, 76% is paid for the local community. Let's face it, Newton's a lot more wealthy than Fall River. So they try to create this balance, and they try to, as accurately as possible, predict how affordable it is for the residents of that city. Nothing is perfect, but it's damn close. So that creates the foundation budget and what the minimum local contribution, what the community has to pay, what the state has to pay. And if you divide that by the number of students, it's so much per student. Mm-hmm. The money follows the student. So when a student chooses to go to a charter public school, that money, just use $10,000 for round figures. Mm-hmm. It's actually more than that in Fall River. But $10,000 of that money follows that student to the charter school. Of that $10,000, $8,000 is paid by the state, $2,000 is paid for by the city. Just like if the student stays in the traditional public school, that $10,000 goes to the traditional public school. So that's how the funding works. The big difference is with charter public schools is that that's all the funding the school gets. So not only does that have to pay for the operating expenses, the teachers, the light, all the operating, it also has to pay for the facilities and the capital costs for the buildings that they're in. In our traditional public schools, they participate in what's called the MSBA, the Mass School Building Association Authority. So all these new schools, Green, Laterno, Cuss, Morton Middle School, were all paid for 90% by the state and 10% by the city of Fall River outside of the school's operating budget. So the big difference between the funding is that the charter schools have to bear the burden of both operating the school and putting a roof over your head in the school with that pool of money.
Now to that, and part of what you had said to bounce off of it, I know you were saying in your explanation about how it's about keeping certain things level, and I don't know if there's anything specific off that you would like to bring up, because again, having to do with the funding, again, one of the biggest concerns is the actual how it does, or the explanation of how it follows the actual child, where the money goes. So that's one point, but to one of the other questions that I would like to bounce off what you said is people do bring up the fact that are the charter schools currently actually playing on the equal playing field, where are they actually covering, say, the percentages of certain types of children that need certain types of education or education requirements, special aid?
Well, we worry about children that are economically disadvantaged. We worry about English language learners. We worry about children that have special needs, the high cost placements. So in 2010, 6 years ago, we actually amended the charter school law. So it is law now that schools have to have a targeted recruitment process. And by recruitment, you have to be careful because it's done by a lottery. So in order to go to a charter school, you have to apply. Your name literally goes into a hat. So there is what's called turnaround plans or targeted goals. So if you look at the incoming levels, and the only way to get into a charter school today is in kindergarten at the Atlantis Charter School, because once you're in, you stay in, or at the Argosy Charter School, you have to come in at a new class. And these new classes, the demographics match up pretty closely to what the city demographics are.
Right. Well, I mean, again, Rebecca, if anything to that, the whole point, the actual funneling, like I said, the money per child, and then that other topic, I'm sure there's something you could add with that.
Sure, so the money does follow the student, but the costs do not follow the student. So we still have an overhead cost, heating to pay, electric to pay. Students don't leave and go to a charter in bulk, so you might lose students in small numbers here and there. So you might have one less student in a particular class, but you still have to pay that teacher or a paraprofessional or the building overhead, like I said. So I think that the legislature recognized that there was an impact on districts and their budgets because of the opening of charter schools, and they created the reimbursement system, which has not been adequately funded over the past couple of years. And it is not for the full tuitions, for the increase in tuition year to year. So people are under the perception that you get the full amount back, and that's not accurate. The result is that we have to cut somewhere, right? So when the money follows but the costs don't follow, we have to make cuts, we have to make adjustments. So there will be an impact on quality somewhere, and eventually if too many charters open, I imagine we would have to close certain schools. And that makes charter schools all that more attractive to parents, because we want to offer smaller class sizes. We want to offer some of the things that the charter schools can offer that we aren't able to afford.
That would be a great follow-up question to this. Is another one of the questions, one of the main questions I hear from people. And again, though, if there's anything that you'd like to mention toward the lottery end, if you feel how do you feel about that process? But then also to that point that you were just making, the parents. One of the questions would be, well, if the public school system is so adamant about trying to take away this as an option, why not? Through that view is why not just then mimic what's working from that end. So those would be the 2 points, other points that I hear out there. So again, on that, what would you like to say toward the actual lottery process, and then that question that does come up?
So to the point of imitating what the charters are doing. That was the intent of charter schools. They were supposed to be innovative laboratories that sort of did out-of-the-box thinking to address some of the more challenging students that may not have been learning in the traditional public schools. And we don't see a lot of evidence for that. As a matter of fact, the state auditor issued a report in 2014 that said the Department of Education has not created any sort of mechanism for sharing of any innovations that are taking place. And as far as our accountability system, when our schools are judged by a single test, I don't see that being an option for them to be innovative because the stakes are just too high. They're judged on those scores just like every other school is judged on the scores. As far as the lottery goes, yes, there is a lottery system, but there are charter schools that have very lengthy applications to get into that lottery, which can discourage certain parents, especially English language learner parents, from applying, or parents who may have disabilities themselves. Some schools want to review discipline records prior to entrance. Some schools don't accept any students after 9th grade.
Well, this gets into one of the other points that I've heard talked about is the questioning of the actual how fair is the lottery system. So what you're getting at, so one of the things I've mentioned, or I wanted to get into, I figure you might have the percentages of this to come off, and then if I could get a response from you, the percentages of actual who's covering what certain types of children to be educated. So what percent of, say, special needs children are their needs being met at a public school versus a charter school? Do you happen to have any the counterbalances on that or opinion on that?
If you don't mind me looking at my phone, I might
Sure.
have an email.
Hey,
Okay.
It's 2016.
Okay.
Almost
So-
2017.
Rebecca and I were talking about how we don't like bringing our devices
And I
out in
do, yeah.
meetings,
Hey,
but
you know,
So
the future is now.
the demographics are different in charter schools overall. Again, a state auditor reported that 78% of charter schools have fewer students with disabilities. And I would say that the students that have disabilities tend not to be as severe. And this was said, I believe, by our Secretary of Education recently, that when a student has a profound disability and needs to be educated outside of the school district, they're returned to the district school who has to pay. The charter schools do not pay for that. 54% have fewer ELL students. They enroll very few new immigrants to the country, and they don't serve as many homeless students as we have in our traditional public schools. I have statistics with Boston, for example. I have the 3 largest school districts. The charter schools serve 13% of ELL students, whereas public schools have 30%.
Now, with that though, that could also go toward the actual point of the where was I going with this? The actual lottery, the fairness again of it. So if those percentages are playing out like that, this is where I'm getting some inclinations from some people where they're and to be honest, if you want to be fair about it, it could be just people who might be a little angry, maybe they didn't get in. So I'll put both sides out there. That would probably be a popular opinion that comes from someone who might be a little flustered. But there is a group out there who would question the actual fairness of the lottery if the percentages aren't showing balance. Because if you're just drawing names, the law of averages should somehow play in, no?
well, I have numbers for you. I can't tell it statewide
Let's
because
go to the numbers.
Yeah, well, yes, and numbers are difficult when you read them out. This is only Atlantis Charter School, so it's not statewide. In the Fall River Public School, the aggregate SPED percentage is 18.9%. That means 18.9% of the students. Does that match with yours?
Yes, it does. I have a chart.
Okay, 18. You can correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't verified these numbers.
18.9 was Argosy.
18.9% Fall River Public School.
Oh, Fall River, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
The Atlantis Kindergarten, the new ones coming in, are at 14.2%. The Atlantis High School SPED percentage is 19.4%. Pretty close. High school's a little higher, elementary's a little lower. English language learners, Fall River Public Schools, traditional public schools are 9.5%.
Yep.
Atlantis Kindergarten is at 12.3%.
But their overall ELL
But their
rate
overall
is 4.6.
their high school is only 6.5. So what's happened is since 2010, where schools need to target, and I'm going to talk something else about the lottery that I think I support that could work. There's been moving in the right direction. But another way to deal with this lottery system, we have an opt-in system now. So that means, Michael, you, as a parent, choose to opt your child into the lottery. So you fill out the application. You fill out the application, your child's name goes into a hat. You come to a big public meeting, they pick the names out of the hat, and you're either happy or sad whether or not you get chosen. The other way to do it is an opt-out system. So every child gets put into the lot. Every child
Well, what
in the
about
school.
the whole voucher system that gets talked about?
I'm not in favor of vouchers, because vouchers then could be transferable to real private schools that don't have MCAS, don't have the systems of accountability. So I'm not a voucher guy. I'm a public education guy, and whether it's, like I said, whether it's traditional public schools, whether it's charter public schools, whether it's comprehensive high schools or vocational high schools, I'm about choice.
Now, I know we would get into some percentages there. Another question that comes up, one of the big ones is, as far specifically having to do with percentages, is right now, do you know around the actual percent of the cap we're approaching? I mean, what is the current cap, and what's the
We're at it in
percent
Fall River, but what
We're
is
close, but we're no longer in the bottom 10%, which put us at the 18% spending cap.
it? Okay,
So we've exited that
Okay.
status.
So statewide, we're at.
There are 120 charters allowed by law. We have 81, including Horace Mann charter schools, which are controlled by the local school committee. So there are still 57,000 seats open for charter schools.
Well, because I mean, one of the questions that I hear from people is you know, how close are we actually to the cap? Where a lot of the opinion would be, even for people who are pro or against, a lot of the major opinion seems to be that we're pretty far away from the cap. Whereas, so leading to the question, why push for a cap lift now? Why so? I guess basically, why so soon?
there are different types of cap lift. Rebecca's correct. But in Fall River, I think there are 6 communities, am I correct, where we've reached a cap?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there are a handful of communities, Fall River, and it's the communities that you would
What do you think would play into
consider.
that?
The fact that these are all urban, Fall River, Lawrence, Springfield, you know, the low-income urban cities where the parents don't have the option and the ability for a choice of private or parochial school, you're not going to see charter schools in the suburbs because the suburban parents have the wherewithal to send their kids to parochial schools. I can tell you in the city, in the town I live in Westport, there's a 50% drop-off from the kids graduating from middle school that go to Westport High School because they all go to Bishop Stang, Bishop Conley, Diamond Vogue, Bristol Aggie. They choose something else. And the ones that go to Diamond Vogue or Bristol Aggie, well, those are public. There's no tuition. But there are hundreds of kids in Bishop Conley and Bishop Stang. And that's why I don't support vouchers. I don't support public money going to support those schools. But I do support choice, and it's in the cities, you know, that we reached a cap.
So the way the question is worded, if there are more than 12 applications, priority would be given to those communities, those poorer communities. But I think what do we say to the parent who is in a traditional public school who wants their child in a smaller class size? You know, they should have the same thing. Their zip code, because they live in a poor community, should not determine the quality of the education they get. Just because Newton has a wealthier population, our kids deserve the same exact thing that those kids do.
That I agree with.
Well, I mean, okay, so, which, right, I 100% agree with, like, anybody, any parent or anybody who cares about the children are gonna have that similar type of an opinion. But just to, I guess, to that point, is there any, I guess, again, because that is one of the major questions, is there anything you'd have as a, you know, to stick to that point as far as the actual raising of the percent? Why so soon at the moment?
I don't think there's any need. There's still 57,000 open seats, and as the senator said, they're looking at those communities, those urban communities, but I don't think a lot of the funding for this question is coming from out of states, from very wealthy corporations. A lot of it's dark money that cannot be traced. I don't know what their interest is in our urban communities in Massachusetts.
Well, what's the, because for someone like myself, I'm going to admit right now, I wouldn't have any idea of what's the actual potential of a private sector gain in the charter school business as a business angle. What would you, I guess, say to that?
So how effective are they?
Well, because I've just never had the outlook to look at it as, like, you know, it's because basically another, I guess that can segue into another point, is one of the other things I'll hear as a criticism or to anybody who would be against the charter schools is it would be a direct correlation to the fact that it's a teachers union situation. So then it gets into the people who might be, you know, they have their own opinions on unions in general, teachers union in general. So that gets into the, you know, that angle of, is this basically something that you're pushing, that this could be the potential of a just focused on private sector gains, whereas someone else might have the criticism then, well, then maybe that's the same reason why your side would be against it, is it takes away from the teachers union gains in that situation. So what would you say to that?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked, because I hear that a lot. And as a teachers union president, it really bothers me, because my union gives me a voice. It gives me a voice to advocate for my kids, and it gives me a voice to advocate for my profession. So when funding is not enough, when our school district this last year had to cut the expanded learning time of 3 of our schools because we didn't have the funding to meet level services, it gave me a voice that I could stand up confidently and not worried about repercussions for speaking out on behalf of my students. And I would say this is not just a union issue. There are 170 school committees who have signed on to vote no, superintendents, the Mass Municipal Association, mayors such as Marty Walsh in Boston, who's very pro-charter but calls this a reckless question, and dozens of civil rights groups. The NAACP has come out against this question. It's just not a smart, responsible way to raise the cap.
Any account of that?
No. Well, Rebecca's right. This isn't a union issue because there's nothing stopping or preventing charter schools from being unionized. They can be unionized. But what makes charter schools an attractive choice to a lot of parents, and it's not a choice of all parents, because they generally have a longer school day. So they don't go extended learning time. That's just their school day. They have longer school years. They have much more discipline. Some parents are turned off by the amount of discipline that's in charter schools. Some parents like the fact that there's more discipline in charter schools. A lot of charter schools have very strict dress codes, uniforms. Some parents like that, some parents don't like that. So that's why it should be a choice. One size doesn't fit all. But you know, we have, because of this formula is so complicated, and because inflation has been so low, and because student enrollment has been flat and declining in so many schools, districts, including in Fall River, that we've had to, in the legislature, go above and beyond the foundation level for the Chapter 70 amount in order to provide increases to the local schools. And you know, as far as are charter schools affecting the finances of traditional public schools, that's a quantitative debate. That's a debate that can be figured out by doing the math and doing the arithmetic by smarter people than me. And smart people have done the math and the arithmetic. And the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation, who are all these smart people, did the math and did the arithmetic and just issued a report on which you can find that lays it all out in math and arithmetic how that is not the case. And anybody that follows politics in Massachusetts knows that the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald never agree on anything.
Right.
The one thing they both agreed on is the fact that charter schools are not draining funds from traditional public schools.
Now, we're running hot on time, big time here, so I was going to say, if there's anything you'd like to close out, I know we got a debate coming up. You guys are going to be at the debate, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, so we got a debate. Everybody out there watching, we got a debate coming up. It's going to be on October 17th, 7 p.m. at Bristol Community College's auditorium. If you want tickets, make sure to go to question2.eventbrite.com. Okay, if you got questions you want to submit, you can submit your questions to debate@scstonline.com. As well, I'm going to be posting this later on the Facebook page, so if you haven't already liked the Facebook page, make sure to do that, www.facebook.com/thenecessarymedia. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/thenecessarymedia. Again, try to get as much promotion as we can out of this. Is there anything you guys want to close out the show with? Again, we probably got, we got seconds, 30 seconds probably?
Let me just say, I hope that even after this question's over, Rebecca and I can continue coming on your show and any show.
If you win,
because
is she going to jail?
This is all, no, she's not going to jail. We're all going to continue because we share the same passion and concern about improving our public education. And I hope every election cycle we can have debates on how to best improve our public education system. Rebecca?
I agree.
Yeah, good.
Thank
so
you.
we'll go on a road show.
All right, well, yeah,
We'll have our own show.
We got the traveling show being planned, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank everybody out there watching. I want to thank my guests for being on the show today. I do appreciate it. So everybody out there, make sure to tune in every week live Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Have a great night, everyone.
I'm serious, Rebecca. We got to go on the road after this is over.
Well, I'm sure it's not an issue that's going to stop the
it segues into
You know, though, to get back to what I was talking about at the beginning,
To be